Hi everyone, I hope you are all doing well, and today it's Saturday and it has been such a really strange day. We've had rain, we've had hail, and finally in the early evening now we've got a little bit of clear sky. So I thought I'd come out here to do some pruning and just to kind of show you around, because I think the last video that I showed you there was just a whole bunch of damage that we had, and it's still here, but it looks like it's a little bit better and I can see everything more clearly. The snow has completely melted, so I'm going to go around and just kind of prune some of the perennials that I have, especially the autumn joy and most of my panicle hydrangeas. And so why don't I set my camera up and start to go through all of that with you. So this is going to be the very first year that this vanilla strawberry, it is going to be growing at a standard on its own. So I don't know if you recall, like I said, last year, this limelight actually looked skinny like that. It was just a single tiny little stem, and look how much it has grown just in one full season. So just to give you some perspective as how fast these things grow. So this one is the strawberry vanilla or vanilla strawberry, and it is about a third, I would say at a third of an inch or so, almost a half of an inch in its first year. And remember, this was just recently trained last summer, I think early fall, late summer last year. So that's what it looks like right now. And I don't know if you remember, but there was one panicle up here which broke off. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to train that one. And here is the limelight. And remember, this one is in its second year as a standard. Okay, so this one now, I would say is about 2/3 of an inch in diameter. But if you go further below, next to the sort of the soil surface, it's almost about, I would say, 3/4 of an inch. So just within 1 year, it pretty much grew from a third of an inch to about 3/4 of an inch. So you're going to find that these really, they typically grow very fast, and it only takes about 2 to 3 years for it to grow into the size that you would normally see that they sell at the nurseries. So here's the base of the old panicle from last year that you can kind of see that it broke off here. So this is where I am going to cut it off, and right below that here you can kind of see that there is a sort of couple nodes that will probably going to be leafing out pretty soon. And just in case you don't know when to start pruning back your panicle hydrangeas, this is when. If you start seeing nodes like that on the branches, that means it is ready for you to prune. Some people even prune a little bit earlier than this because these are pretty hardy, and you can pretty much prune them anywhere in during the winter, late winter, or right now, which is what we're in, early spring. And again, the presence of the leaf nodes like that, that's a good indicator that you now can start pruning. So again, I'm going to snip it off right about here, and I am going to train these two into the stems that will be a part of the canopy, and possibly I will also see if I could get those nodes to leaf out as well. And then everything else below these two nodes I would just remove if they end up leafing out after. And all I'm doing is I'm just going to do a straight cut. And I like to do straight cuts rather than an angle cut because it actually reduces less contact or surface area exposed to the air, which I think will help it heal a little bit faster. So here's the close-up of the limelight that I showed you earlier. And so you can kind of see that this was the original panicle that was on the stem when I first trained it into the standard 2 years ago. And then last year I cut it right at the top, and then first node right below that there were 3 branches that came out, and then right below that is the next node. I also have 3 more branches, so there are 6 branches in here that became the canopy. And so my rationale for doing this is that with the 6 stems here, if I don't prune these back, all of the nodes along the stems here will form new branches, and it will make the canopy really, really wide. So if that's what you want, you can just keep on doing that and just cut the panicles off right below the first node that you see, that the little leaf buds. So you can do that. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it back to about a half, and I will leave about 3 nodes on the original 6 stems, and just have those leaf out as the new smaller stems. Because what I don't want to do is I don't want to cut it all the way back, because if I cut it all the way back, the new stem or the fewer stems that come out will be really long, like what I have here, and then I end up with panicles that are extra big. And I know large panicles are desirable. So for me, what I rather would have is I would rather have smaller size panicles. So I will again keep at least 3 nodes. I might even keep 4 or 5 nodes here and just cut about maybe a third up to a half. So I'm going to come a little bit closer so I can see how the leaf buds look, and I will kind of determine. But previously, I can show you the other one that I've got in the back, which are about 6-7 years now, and that's how I did it. That very second year is I left about 3 nodes just below, and they leafed out fine. But anyhow, I'm just going to come a little bit closer and just show you how that's going to look, and then we'll go from there. So if you just kind of look at each of the stems here that becomes a part of the canopy, you can kind of see that there's 1 node, there's 2, there's 3, and then 4th, and so on, right? So I think, like I said, I'm going to cut it back so that maybe I'm going to keep 5 nodes just to kind of see how that works. But like I said, previously I kept about 3 nodes and I worked from there. But I think I'm going to maybe perhaps keep 5 and see how that's going to look. So here's the limelight, and like I said, I kept about 4 to 5 nodes just below, just so that I can have more smaller size flowers, which is what I want. And I think the smaller they are, the less fluffy they will be, because instead of sending out nutrients to form 4 blooms, it will now have many along the stem here. So the canopy will be a little bit sort of more full, I think. But the next year, what I may end up doing is I might cut it back to about 3 nodes, like I did with the limelights that I have in the back, because now that it's got a chance to grow another year, each one of these stems will be much stronger and will be much sturdier, so that the panicles that will form the next year won't be as floppy. So that's how I'm going to do that. And here is another vanilla strawberry stander that I also trained last year as well. And again, it's got 1 flower. I know it's hard to see at the top, which I will cut off. And just like the other stander, I will cut it just below the old panicle so I can have the longer trunk. And then I will try to keep, all the nodes that are in the first, or all the leaf buds that are in the first 2 nodes. And then everything below that, I will just remove as they form. So here are 2 more little lime standers that I accidentally got because I tried to divide my little lime bush, and I ended up getting 2 stems here that had enough roots that I was able to transplant as 2 individual standards. And actually my lips are frozen. I think it's about 2 degrees Celsius right now, which is about, I think, mid-30s Fahrenheit, so it's kind of cold. Anyway, so this one would look something like you would see in its sort of second year as a stander, right? But these branches were part of the the original stem that was attached to the original bush last year. So and this one is just a single stem with the one panicle, which I will kind of cut at the top just like I did with the vanilla strawberry. And this one, I think what I will do is I will keep four nodes, and then I'll cut the rest off like I did with the limelight in its second year. So here's what the limelight looks like. I think that looks pretty good. Now I have to go and find a couple more new containers to plant those in because I like them in the containers. I think panicle hydrangeas actually look quite nice in containers. So here's a bobo stander that was trained last year, and I'm gonna come a little closer so you can see what the rationale is as to why I normally keep at least 3 nodes just below the original stem of the canopy. So in the very first year, there was one panicle that was here, and you can kind of see the remnant of where I cut that off. And then last year, it grew out this one stem, 2 stems, and then these 3 stems. And then I cut the blooms off here. You can kind of see that, right? And then I left 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I actually left 5 nodes here. And as you can see, not all the nodes form stems of the canopy. So this one here, even though I left 5 nodes, I only had 1, 2, 3 stems. So the rest didn't come out. So that's sort of the reason why. Now, if you find that you've gotten leaf nodes all the way to the end and you want to keep maybe 2 or even 1 or 2, that's fine as well. But like I said, just for security, I tend to keep more. And now if I want, I can even cut it like here and let these nodes here form more stems to form a fuller canopy. But I think that actually looks quite nice for me because I like the bobo to be a little bit taller. So all of the nodes that I have below here can just kind of extend the height of the trunk, right? So anyhow, now what I will do is I will cut each one of these stems here, and I will do the same thing. What I will do now, instead of leaving 5 nodes like I did for these 3 original stem in the second year, I think I'm going to cut it so that I only have 2 nodes just below, and I'm just going to do that right now. And this bobo is actually the same one that I nicked. I don't know if you remember when I transplanted into this container, I accidentally nicked the side. So I'm just so grateful that it didn't die, because I was going to take some wax and just kind of fill it in to protect it, but luckily it survived. So I hope it's still going to be okay. But I did check the stems and they're all green, and that's why I know it is okay. And here's what this bobo standard looks like. Isn't that cute? I can't wait to see it bloom. I'm just super excited. So right now I'm in the back, and here's another bobo that I have as a standard in its now second year. So last year was its first year as a standard, and as you can see, it did not do well this winter. We had so much snow and the snow packed it so much on top that when it started melting, many of the branches at the top actually broke off. So I think for this one, I will actually prune it back or trim it back all the way, and maybe, you know, whichever stem that I see that's strong, I will keep. The rest probably it's gonna be all cut back, and hopefully it'll be okay. So here's the bobo stander here that I pruned back. Now this one doesn't look as nice as the one that I had at the front, but I think, you know, with so many broken branches, it does look a little more severe than the other one. But I think it will fill out quite nicely, and I don't have to worry about, unlike other type of hydrangeas, this one blooms from this year's growth. So all of this will form out new stems, and it will be beautiful as the season progresses. And so I'm going to tackle the next bobo standard that I've got. So here's another bobo standard that I have. I think this one is supposed to be in its 4th year. No, timeline is kind of off for me, but this is not a new standard that I've trained. This is a few years old now, and it looks a little messy on the side. So I'm just going to go ahead and just kind of quickly prune back this bush right here so that you can see the canopy of this standard a little bit better. So here is this standard. Hopefully you can see that a little bit better now. So you can kind of see the outline of the canopy of the standard, right? And again, like I said, this is not a first year standard. This is about 3 years old. So it is a lot more full than the other 2 bobo standards that I just showed you, right? So that is pretty much something that you can expect once it hits about year 3 or so. First couple years will look quite not as full, but as you can see, this is a much fuller standard. So I will probably going to prune this a little bit differently. The first thing I would do is I would prune all of the broken stems first, as well as all the panicles that are here, and then I will sort of prune away all the stems that might look a little flimsy, a little bit more weaker, and then with the stems that are sturdy, I will cut them back to about 2 or 3 nodes. So here's what the bobo looks like right now. So as you can kind of see, I cut back all the broken stems, I cut back all the weak stems, and I try to cut back to about 2 to 3 nodes on each of the stems. So that is sort of how I do it. But if you want, you can even cut it back more severely, or not even cut back or prune or trim at all. And I think all those options will be just as nice. But like I said, panicle hydrangeas do need a little bit more pruning than usual. And like I said, if you're not sure, just cut back to the first node that you see that's sort of looking like it's gonna leaf out, and that would be just as fine as well. So the next 2 standards that I'm going to tackle is the limelight here. So you can kind of see here, and then I've got another one at the other end. So this limelight, same as the other one at the other end of the background, this is going to be year number 6 that it is sort of growing as a standard, and you can kind of see that the trunk is a lot bigger, wider than the one that I showed you earlier at the front that's going to go into its 2nd year as a standard, right? So you can kind of see that 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I had one stem at the top, and then I kind of kept, you can kind of see, sorry, this is in the way, but you can kind of see there's one there, 2, 3, 4. There's 4 stems that became a part of the original canopy, and then I kind of cut back. You can kind of see the remnants of the following year, how I pruned that back. So I'm going to come a little bit closer so you can actually see it in more details. So this one, you can kind of see that there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stems that I left from the main trunk here, that second year. And then from each one of those main stems, you can kind of see that there were more stems that leafed out along the those main 5 ones. And then you can kind of see, like this one I left 1, 2, 3, 4 nodes, but only this one leafed out with the new stems, right? So anyway, so the way that I'm going to prune this one is going to be pretty much similar to what I did with the bobo. I'm going to first cut back all the old panicles, and then I'm going to cut back all the broken branches, and then I also will cut back all these weak flimsy branches like what I have here. So these ones I'm going to cut all the way back, because when the new panicles do form, especially for limelights, the panicles tend to be very dense and very heavy, so these flimsy stems would not be able to hold up the new panicles, so those will be cut back. And then for the rest of the stems, I was just going to cut back, leave at least 2 to 3 nodes or even 4 nodes, and then and go from there. There, this is how this limelight is gonna look. So like I said, I pretty much did what I told you earlier, and then for every stem that I think are strong enough, I kept about 3, maybe 4 nodes or so. Like I said, there's no right or wrong answer. The more stems or nodes I leave now, the more stems that will come out later, and therefore there will be more flowers, but the flowers will be a little bit smaller. But with limelights, you can't not really get panicles that are too small. I think they are gigantic panicles, and so I'm really aiming for smaller size, and therefore they will be less floppy later on in the season. So I don't know if you remember last year, the panicles that I had, they were still pretty big, and this is how I pruned it last spring. And so the year before that, I actually pruned it more severely, and the panicles were way too big and dense and floppy. So my goal, like I said, is to have more branches, more flowers, but smaller size, and therefore less floppy. So here's the second limelight, and I'm going to do exactly what I did with the other limelight. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that and show you the work afterwards. So here's how this limelight looks like. So that's pretty much how I prune a mature standard, hydrangea standard. So I'm gonna go back to the front and do the same thing with the quickfire standard that I've got at the front. Just before I go, I thought I'd mention something, because I know some of you are thinking that you might want more hydrangeas because you've got a larger yard or garden to fill up. So many of these stems here, sorry, I hope you can see that. Many of these stems here, if you can kind of see that there are nodes on here, leaf buds here. Do you see that? So all of this means is that if you actually dip this in a little bit of rooting hormone, you can actually put this in the potting mix and keep it in a shady spot and keep it moist, and it will root and form new plants for you. So that's pretty much how you could do it. But like I said, I don't do it because I don't have any more space to plant anymore. But if you needed to, you could do that, which is pretty interesting, isn't it? That you can actually do this. And the best time to actually root them is when they're in this early stage of the season, when they're just about to leaf out, and you can kind of see that the leaf buds are all kind of there, right? So you can try that, and that will be quite interesting to see how many of these will root. And I would always do more, because sometimes not all of them will take. So if you do 10 and if 1 or 2 of them don't root well, you can always have the other 8, right? So here's a good one to actually root as well. There's just many leaf buds on here. So here's the quick fire standard, and this is one that I did not train. I actually bought it as a standard because it was in front of the house, and I didn't have the patience to wait for a few years for it to mature to this size. So I actually bought it, and because it sits at the front here where we pile a lot of snow on this area, so there tend to be a lot of dieback, and so this tree has been through so much. And just this past winter, you can see in the previous video, I think I mentioned it, we had to cut off one of the big branches on the side here. And so this canopy is going to be a lot smaller than what it was last year. And because we always get a lot of dieback on this standard, that's why this canopy never gets a chance to really grow to its maximum size, right? So anyhow, I'm just going to do what I did with the limelight by cutting back all of the things that I mentioned, the old panicles, the weak branches, the broken branches, and then I'll try to keep a few stems or a few nodes on each of the stems. And unlike the limelight, this one is never floppy because the panicles are lacy and they're not as dense as the limelight. So I can keep even the weak stems I could keep as well, and the panicles would be okay and they won't be as floppy as the limelight. So here's what the quick fire looks like right now, and so I think that's going to be the end of this video. So I'm gonna say goodbye, and because it is getting cold and chilly, and I probably will leave the pruning of the rest of the panicle hydrangeas for next week when I have some more time and when the weather is gonna be much better than it was today. Because if you live in our region, you probably know that today is just such a horrible day. We had rain, we had hail, we had everything, and right now it's like in the evening, and luckily the rain has stopped, and that's how I was able to go out and do this to share with you. So anyway, I'm going to head inside and cook dinner, and again I want to say thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you found it useful, and have yourself a wonderful day or night wherever you are in the world. Take care, and I will see you on the next video. Bye bye for now.